Sean Diddy Combs isn't in general population at MDC Brooklyn. He's in the Special Housing Unit, a designation that sounds protective but comes with its own hell. The SHU at MDC is where high-profile inmates, witnesses needing protection, and those deemed security risks are housed in near-total isolation. It's supposed to keep him safe from other inmates, but it might destroy him psychologically before his trial ever happens. Marcus Reed, an investigative journalist with sources inside MDC Brooklyn, has pieced together details about Diddy's current conditions from corrections officers, inmates who've been in the SHU, and federal court documents. The reality is far different from what the public imagines when they hear special housing. This isn't luxury accommodations. This isn't celebrity treatment. This is a concrete box smaller than most bathrooms, where one of hip-hop's most powerful moguls now exists in conditions designed to break even the strongest minds. The question everyone's asking isn't just, is Diddy safe? It's, can he survive long enough to reach trial with his sanity intact? The answer is more complicated and disturbing than anyone wants to acknowledge. Subscribe right now, because what you're about to learn about Diddy's actual living conditions inside MDC Brooklyn will shock you. This isn't speculation. This is documented reality about how celebrity inmates survive federal detention. Don't miss a single detail. Diddy's cell in the Special Housing Unit measures approximately 8 feet by 10 feet. A concrete box containing a metal bunk bed bolted to the wall with a thin mattress, a stainless steel toilet sink combination, and a small metal desk also bolted to the floor. No television. No radio. Limited personal items permitted. The cell has a narrow window, reinforced glass, showing a small rectangle of New York sky, but positioned so he cannot see the ground or identify his location within the facility. The door is solid steel with a small window and a slot for food trays. He cannot see other inmates, cannot hear them clearly through the thick concrete walls. The isolation is deliberate and total. This is his world now, 80 square feet of concrete and steel, where a man who commanded multi-million-dollar business empires, who partied with presidents, who built an entertainment dynasty, now spends 23 hours per day. 1 hour daily, he's permitted recreation, alone in a slightly larger concrete cage. Why is Diddy in the SHU instead of general population? The reasons are multiple and serious. First, his celebrity status makes him a target. Other inmates would attempt to assault him for reputation, to prove they're tougher than a famous rapper, or simply because violence against celebrities brings street credibility. Second, the nature of his charges. In federal detention, inmates charged with sex crimes face immediate danger from other prisoners who consider these offenses beneath even criminal standards. Diddy's allegations put him at severe risk of assault or worse if housed in general population. Third, his wealth creates vulnerabilities. Inmates with money become targets for extortion, debt schemes, and violence if they refuse to pay protection money or by influence. Diddy's billions make him an attractive target for every hustler in the facility. Finally, the federal government has a vested interest in keeping him alive and healthy enough to stand trial. A dead or severely injured defendant creates legal complications and public relations disasters. The SHU isn't just protecting Diddy from other inmates. It's protecting the government's case against him. Diddy wakes when cell lights activate remotely around 6 a.m. Breakfast arrives through the food slot, lukewarm, institutional, eaten alone. No conversation. No community. Just him and gray walls. The morning stretches endlessly. Some inmates exercise, push-ups, sit-ups, pacing the 8 feet back and forth like caged animals. Others read books from a limited library list delivered weekly. Diddy has access to legal documents, which likely consume most of his time. Discovery materials, witness statements, prosecutor filings. Thousands of pages detailing allegations against him. Lunch arrives through the slot. Afternoon blends into evening. More reading. More pacing. More confronting reality. Dinner comes. Lights stay on. The SHU never goes completely dark. Control is maintained through constant visibility and monitoring. At some point during the day, he gets his 1 hour of recreation. escorted by guards to a larger concrete cage, maybe 12 feet by 20 feet, with high walls and steel mesh covering the top. Sky visible but nothing else. He can exercise, pace, breathe slightly less confined air. Then back to the cell for 23 more hours. The special housing unit isn't just physical isolation, it's psychological warfare. Research on solitary confinement consistently shows that isolation causes severe psychological damage within weeks. Hallucinations, paranoia, cognitive dysfunction, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Diddy has been in the SHU for months now. What's happening to his mind? Former inmates describe the experience. Time loses meaning when every day is identical. You start talking to yourself. Memories become unreliable. Concentration becomes impossible. Depression sets in like fog you can't escape. For someone like Diddy, accustomed to constant stimulation, surrounded by people, managing multiple businesses, living in luxury with endless options, the sensory deprivation is exponentially more traumatic. Going from penthouses and private jets to an 80-square-foot concrete box isn't just a downgrade. It's a psychological shock that few minds are equipped to process. MDC Brooklyn provides mental health services, theoretically. But in practice, that means brief conversations through cell doors with overworked psychologists who can't provide real treatment. Medications might be prescribed, but there's no escape from the isolation causing the symptoms. Diddy's legal team has filed multiple motions for bail, all denied. They've argued he's not a flight risk, offered massive bond amounts, proposed house arrest with 24/7 monitoring. Judges have rejected every appeal. The message: you're staying in MDC Brooklyn until trial, regardless of wealth or fame. This creates strategic challenges. Defendants who can make bail prepare for trial from freedom, meeting with lawyers in offices, reviewing evidence in comfort, maintaining mental health and physical well-being. Diddy prepares from a concrete cell, with limited attorney access and zero privacy for legal discussions. Every conversation with his lawyers is monitored. Every legal document he receives is screened by correction staff. The MDC's visiting rooms for attorney meetings offer more space than his cell, but remain institutional, under surveillance, time-limited. His legal team struggles to prepare a complex defense while their client deteriorates psychologically in conditions designed to break people. The prosecution knows this. The psychological pressure of pretrial detention often coerces plea deals from defendants who can't endure the wait for trial. The cruel irony: the measures keeping Diddy safe from other inmates are destroying him psychologically. Protective custody in the SHU prevents physical violence, but inflicts mental violence through isolation. Other celebrities who've experienced protective custody in federal facilities describe the paradox. You're grateful not to be in general population where you'd face constant threats, but the isolation becomes its own form of torture. You're protected from violence, but subjected to sensory deprivation. You're kept alive, but barely living. Former inmates report that long-term SHU residents often develop mental health conditions that didn't exist before incarceration. Paranoid delusions, obsessive thoughts, inability to process complex information, social anxiety so severe they can't function even when released. Is Diddy safe in the SHU? Physically, probably yes. He's unlikely to be stabbed, beaten, or killed by other inmates. Psychologically, he's being damaged daily in ways that may prove more destructive than any physical assault. The question isn't just whether he survives until trial. It's whether the person who faces trial will be mentally competent after months or years of isolation. In general population, commissary purchases offer small comforts, better food, hygiene products, writing materials. In the SHU, commissary privileges are restricted. Diddy can order limited items, but faces constraints regular inmates don't. His wealth becomes a liability even in commissary. Ordering too much attracts attention from other inmates, who learn about it through the prison grapevine. Staff members gossip. Word spreads about the celebrity with unlimited funds. This information reaches general population, where inmates calculate angles to exploit his money. Some items common in general population commissary aren't permitted in the SHU for security reasons. No electronics. Limited food items. Restricted quantities. Even with millions in the bank, Diddy can't buy his way to comfort in federal detention. The commissary also creates a paper trail, every purchase logged, monitored, potentially used by prosecutors to argue he's living comfortably despite his complaints about conditions. It's a lose-lose situation. Deprive yourself to avoid scrutiny, or purchase small comforts knowing they'll be used against you. All phone calls from MDC Brooklyn are monitored and recorded. For Diddy, this means every conversation with family, friends, or business associates is listened to by correction staff and potentially reviewed by prosecutors. Privacy doesn't exist. His calls are likely limited. The SHU restricts phone access more than general population. He might get 15 to 30 minutes of call time several times per week, scheduled at the facility's convenience, not his. Each call requires pre-approval of phone numbers. Random calls aren't possible. His mother, his children, his business partners. Every conversation happens under surveillance. He can't discuss his case frankly. Can't have private moments with loved ones. Can't maintain business relationships normally. Everything is monitored, logged, potentially used as evidence. Letters are screened. Incoming and outgoing mail is read by staff, copied, sometimes rejected if content violates regulations. He can't write freely to anyone. His correspondence is evidence gathering for prosecutors who scrutinize every word for admissions, inconsistencies, or witness tampering. This communication isolation compounds the physical isolation. He's cut off from genuine human connection on multiple levels simultaneously. Diddy isn't the first celebrity to face federal detention. Kelly spent years at MDC Brooklyn before conviction and transfer to prison. Michael Avenatti, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Ghislaine Maxwell all navigated celebrity status in detention or prison with varying levels of success. Kelly's experience at MDC Brooklyn offers grim precedent. He was also in protective custody, isolated, facing similar charges. Reports indicated severe psychological deterioration during his pretrial detention. He emerged for trial visibly changed, thinner, older, beaten down by months of isolation. Ghislaine Maxwell, held at MDC Brooklyn before her trial and conviction, complained of harsh conditions, inadequate food, psychological torture through isolation. Her complaints were largely dismissed by courts who viewed them as attempts to gain sympathy rather than legitimate grievances. The pattern is consistent. Celebrity defendants in federal custody claim inhumane treatment. Prosecutors and courts respond that conditions, while harsh, are standard for high-security inmates. The public often shows little sympathy. They're criminals, they deserve it. But legally, they're presumed innocent until proven guilty. The punishment happens before conviction. If this investigation into Diddy's actual conditions is shocking you, hit that like button and comment whether you think this level of isolation before trial is justified or constitutes punishment before conviction. This gets even more intense. MDC Brooklyn has protocols for suicide prevention, but they're imperfect. The facility has seen multiple suicides despite monitoring systems. For a celebrity under extreme psychological pressure in isolation, the risk is elevated. Signs of suicidal ideation in isolated inmates include withdrawal from even limited social contact, refusing recreation time, declining to communicate with family, giving away commissary items, dramatic mood changes. Corrections officers are trained to watch for these indicators, but subtle signs can be missed. If Diddy were placed on suicide watch, conditions would worsen. Complete isolation in a padded cell. Tear-resistant safety garment replacing regular clothing. Constant camera monitoring. It's protective custody within protective custody. Isolation intensified. Former MDC Brooklyn inmates describe suicide watch as psychologically devastating. You're stripped of all dignity, all privacy, all control. Guards watch you use the toilet. You sleep on a padded floor under constant bright lights. It prevents suicide, but at the cost of any remaining mental stability. The question isn't whether Diddy has contemplated escape through death. It's whether the system would recognize the signs in time if he did. visitation at MDC Brooklyn for SHU inmates is severely restricted. Diddy's family must navigate bureaucratic obstacles to see him. Advanced scheduling weeks out, extensive security screening, limited visit duration, no physical contact. His children visit through reinforced glass barriers, speaking via phones monitored and recorded. His mother makes the journey to see her son in a concrete visiting room designed to prevent any intimacy or privacy. These visits, meant to maintain family bonds, often highlight how much incarceration has damaged those connections. Video visitation offers an alternative but comes with technological glitches, poor audio of video quality, and the same lack of privacy. Every word spoken is recorded, every gesture monitored. For Diddy's young children, these visits create trauma. They see their father in prison clothes, behind barriers, unable to hug them. Psychologists note that children of incarcerated parents suffer lasting psychological effects even when the parent is eventually released. The visits intended to help may actually compound the damage to family relationships that incarceration inevitably causes. Outside MDC Brooklyn, media speculation about Diddy's conditions runs wild. Some reports suggest he's being given celebrity treatment, better food, more privileges, easier time. Others claim he's being specifically targeted for harsh treatment because of his fame and the nature of his charges. The truth is likely neither extreme. Diddy is probably experiencing standard SHU conditions. Harsh by any measure, but not exceptional treatment either positive or negative. The SHU is terrible for everyone in it, celebrity or not. But media narratives shape public perception. If coverage suggests he's comfortable, public sympathy disappears. If coverage suggests he's suffering, some celebrate his punishment despite presumption of innocence. Either way, the court of public opinion has convicted him already, making fair jury selection nearly impossible. His legal team faces a dilemma: complain about conditions and risk seeming entitled, or stay silent and allow deterioration to continue. They've chosen strategic silence mostly, acknowledging conditions only in bail motions that judges have rejected. The media narrative continues regardless, disconnected from reality. Prosecutors have alleged that Diddy attempted to intimidate witnesses from inside MDC Brooklyn, using monitored phone calls to contact potential witnesses, instructing associates to reach out to people on his behalf, violating court orders. These allegations, whether true or not, have resulted in even more restrictions. His phone privileges were reduced further. His visitor list was scrutinized more carefully. Every communication became evidence of alleged continued criminal conduct. The circular logic is punishing. Restricted communication drives desperate attempts to communicate, which are then cited as reasons to restrict communication further. For someone trying to prepare a defense while maintaining business interests and family relationships, the limited communication options create impossible choices. Is he genuinely trying to intimidate witnesses? Or is he simply trying to manage the collapse of his life from inside a concrete box with no good options? The truth likely falls somewhere between prosecution claims and defense denials, but the result is the same: tighter restrictions, deeper isolation, more psychological pressure as his trial date remains uncertain months or years away. Court appearances show Diddy's physical transformation: weight loss, graying hair, aged appearance. The stress and poor nutrition of MDC Brooklyn are visible in his face and body. The food at MDC Brooklyn is notoriously inadequate, low quality, insufficient calories, often cold by the time it reaches inmates. Even with commissary privileges to supplement, SHU inmates can't access the better institutional food available to general population. Diddy is likely losing weight not by choice, but by circumstance. Exercise opportunities are limited to his 1-hour recreation period. No weights, no gym equipment, just a concrete cage where he can do bodyweight exercises. For someone who likely had personal trainers and fully equipped gyms before incarceration, maintaining physical health in these conditions is nearly impossible. Sleep disruption adds to physical deterioration. The SHU never goes completely dark. Noise from staff movements, doors opening and closing, announcements over intercoms. Sleep is fragmented, poor quality. Chronic sleep deprivation causes physical health decline, cognitive impairment, and worsening mental health symptoms. Preparing for trial from the SHU creates obstacles that defendants in general population don't face. Diddy can't easily meet with his full legal team. Conference rooms must be reserved. He's escorted in shackles, transported through secure corridors, placed in monitored rooms. His attorneys bring boxes of documents, discovery materials, witness statements, evidence files. But he can't take them back to his cell. He can review them during attorney meetings, but must rely on memory and notes when back in isolation. Complex legal strategy is nearly impossible to develop under these constraints. Co-defendants or witnesses cooperating with defense might need to communicate with him, but the facility severely limits inter-inmate communication. Building a coordinated defense becomes exponentially harder when defendants can't strategize together. Evidence includes videos, audio recordings, documents requiring detailed review. Diddy doesn't have access to computers, can't review digital evidence independently, must rely entirely on attorney visits to examine materials. This puts defense at significant disadvantage compared to prosecutors who have unlimited access to evidence, technology, and support staff. His mental deterioration from isolation makes absorbing complex information harder, creating a vicious cycle. For decades, Diddy commanded rooms. He controlled narratives. He made decisions that affected thousands of people's careers and lives. Power was his natural state. People sought his approval, needed his support, feared his rejection. In the SHU at MDC Brooklyn, that power dynamic reversed completely. Corrections officers control when he eats, when lights go on or off, when he can make phone calls, when he can shower. He has no power, no control, no ability to command anyone. This reversal isn't just practical, it's psychological warfare. Taking someone accustomed to ultimate control and rendering them completely powerless creates cognitive dissonance that can break even strong personalities. Former inmates describe the adjustment as devastating. You go from being someone to being a number, from making decisions to having every decision made for you, from commanding respect to receiving orders. The psychological impact of this reversal often damages people more than the physical conditions, creating lasting changes in personality and self-perception. While Diddy sits in the SHU, his business empire faces uncertainty. Deals fall apart. Partners distance themselves. Revenue streams dry up. Legal fees accumulate at astronomical rates. Top federal defense attorneys charge $1,500 plus per hour, and complex cases require thousands of hours. Asset seizures complicate everything. Prosecutors can freeze accounts, seize property, tie up wealth to prevent it being used for bail, restitution, or legal defense. Diddy's billions exist largely on paper now, inaccessible, while he sits in concrete isolation. His companies operate without him, but his absence creates leadership voids. Can Bad Boy Records continue without its founder? Do business partners maintain confidence in enterprises led by someone facing serious federal charges? Sponsorships and partnerships dissolve. Income streams stop. The financial pressure compounds psychological pressure. He's losing wealth daily while sitting powerless to prevent it, adding to the stress of isolation, pending trial, and threat of conviction. Some defendants accept plea deals not because they're guilty, but because continued incarceration destroys their financial lives regardless of eventual verdict. Jeffrey Epstein's death at MCC Manhattan, a federal facility similar to MDC Brooklyn, looms over every high-profile case in federal detention. Epstein allegedly committed suicide while on suicide watch, though conspiracy theories abound suggesting murder. Diddy's legal team is acutely aware of this precedent. They've likely demanded specific security measures, monitoring protocols, and protective arrangements to prevent similar outcomes. Whether suicide or murder, Epstein's death created a template for how high-profile federal defendants can die in custody. The circumstances are similar enough to cause concern. Wealthy celebrity, sex crime allegations, powerful connections, potential to implicate other prominent people. The conspiracy theories write themselves, which creates danger regardless of whether there's any actual threat. MDC Brooklyn implemented enhanced protocols after Epstein's death, but the fundamental problems remain: understaffing, inadequate monitoring, corruption vulnerabilities, and the impossibility of preventing all suicides or assaults in detention facilities. Is Diddy safe? Physically, he's probably safer than Epstein was, but probably safer isn't the same as safe. The risk exists, acknowledged or not, and it affects how his legal team strategizes and how he experiences every day in isolation. As months in the SHU accumulate, plea deal pressure intensifies. Prosecutors know that pretrial detention breaks defendants psychologically. The longer Diddy sits in isolation, the more attractive any deal that ends his confinement becomes. A plea might mean admitting guilt to charges he denies. It might mean accepting prison time. But it would end the uncertainty, the isolation, the deterioration. Defendants in his position often reach breaking points, where accepting conviction seems better than enduring pretrial detention indefinitely. His attorneys resist plea pressure, maintaining innocence, preparing for trial. But they watch their client deteriorate daily, knowing that the psychological damage from extended SHU time might make him incompetent to stand trial eventually. Prosecutors use this leverage deliberately. The worse conditions become, the more willing defendants are to accept deals. It's coercive by design, though legally permissible. The question is whether Diddy can withstand the pressure long enough to reach trial, or whether isolation will break him into accepting a plea he'd otherwise reject. Is Diddy being medicated for anxiety, depression, or other mental health conditions caused or worsened by isolation? MDC Brooklyn's medical records are confidential, but psychiatric medications are commonly prescribed to SHU inmates struggling with isolation's psychological effects. Anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants, even antipsychotics are used to manage symptoms. But medications have side effects that can impair judgment, memory, and decision-making, problematic for someone trying to prepare for trial. Some defendants refuse medications, fearing they'll be less able to participate in their defense. Others accept them, desperate for any relief from psychological suffering. It's an impossible choice: endure untreated mental health symptoms or accept medications that might compromise cognitive function. If Diddy is medicated, prosecutors might use this to argue he's receiving adequate mental health care, dismissing complaints about conditions. If he's not medicated but needs to be, his competence to stand trial could be questioned. Either way, the medication question creates legal and practical complications for a defense already fighting uphill battles. Each court appearance requires extensive preparation and security measures. Diddy wakes hours before dawn, is shackled and transported to court in secure vehicles, spends hours in courthouse holding cells, appears before judges in prison clothing. These appearances offer breaks from SHU isolation, but come with their own humiliations. He's led in chains. He sits at defense tables in institutional clothing, while prosecutors wear expensive suits. The visual contrast reinforces his powerlessness. In court, he tries to appear composed, engaged, mentally competent. But months of isolation take visible tolls. Observers note his appearance deteriorating: weight loss, fatigue, difficulty concentrating during lengthy proceedings. Judges see a man breaking under pretrial detention pressure. His legal team uses these appearances to renew bail arguments, pointing to visible deterioration as evidence that continued detention is unjustly punishing him before conviction. Judges remain unmoved, noting that harsh conditions are standard for high-security federal inmates awaiting trial on serious charges. Each hearing ends with him returning to the SHU, to the concrete cell, to the isolation that continues breaking him piece by piece. Public perception of Diddy's incarceration varies wildly. Some believe he's suffering unjustly, subjected to punishment before conviction. Others think he deserves everything he's experiencing and worse. The gap between these perceptions is nearly impossible to bridge. Those who've never experienced jail or known someone incarcerated often imagine it's easier than reality. They assume celebrities get special treatment, better conditions, privileges that make time easier. The truth, that Diddy sits in an 80-square-foot concrete box 23 hours daily, isolated from all human contact, deteriorating mentally and physically, doesn't match their assumptions. Those who understand federal detention recognize his experience is standard for SHU inmates, neither better nor worse than others in protective custody. But standard doesn't mean humane or acceptable, especially for someone presumed innocent. The perception gap affects his case. If potential jurors believe he's been living comfortably, they may be less sympathetic to defense arguments about the toll pretrial detention has taken. Public opinion, while not supposed to influence trials, inevitably does. Diddy's trial date remains uncertain, potentially months or even years away. Federal cases involve extensive discovery, complex legal motions, and scheduling challenges. He could sit in the SHU for a year or more before trial begins. Every month in isolation increases psychological damage. Research shows that after 6 months in solitary conditions, inmates experience measurable cognitive decline, personality changes, and mental health deterioration that can become permanent. Diddy is approaching or exceeding that threshold. By the time he faces trial, will he be mentally competent? Will he be able to assist his attorneys, understand proceedings, make informed decisions about his defense? The very conditions of his pretrial detention may render him unable to receive the fair trial he's constitutionally guaranteed. This creates a legal paradox. The measures keeping him safe physically may be making fair trial impossible psychologically. Defense attorneys could eventually argue incompetence to stand trial based on deterioration caused by the very system holding him for trial. It's a catch-22 with no good resolution. So is Diddy safe? The answer is complicated and uncomfortable. Physically, he's probably as safe as anyone can be in federal detention. The SHU protects him from violence, assault, and murder by other inmates. He's unlikely to be stabbed, beaten, or killed. In that narrow sense, yes, he's safe. Psychologically, he's being destroyed. The isolation, the sensory deprivation, the powerlessness, the uncertainty. These are breaking him in ways that may prove more damaging than any physical attack. His mind is under assault daily from conditions designed to punish and control through deprivation. Legally, he faces charges that could result in life imprisonment. Whether he's convicted or acquitted, the pretrial detention has already imposed punishment. He's lost months or years of his life, seen his empire crumble, endured conditions that constitute psychological torture by international human rights standards. Is this justice? Is this what presumption of innocence looks like? These questions haunt criminal justice reform advocates and should trouble anyone who values constitutional rights. Diddy may or may not be guilty of the crimes charged, but the punishment is happening now, before any verdict, in a concrete box where a man who commanded the world now commands nothing, isolated and breaking, waiting for a trial that may come too late to matter. If this investigation into Diddy's reality at MDC Brooklyn opened your eyes to pretrial detention conditions, subscribe now because next week we're revealing what happens if he's convicted and sent to federal prison long-term. Hit that notification bell and comment whether you think these conditions before trial are justice or torture. The truth about celebrity incarceration is darker than anyone admits.